Mark,
Jesus, Paul. Hey, how's it going, man?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I was just sitting here looking at the Instagram. I don't know. I think that's mommy's. You have to ask her. It's so little. I know. You have to ask mommy, though. I don't know. Maybe it's not when. No,
Who
it probably
knows?
is when he was a baby. That might go to one of your baby dolls. Or maybe it goes to A. Or maybe it belongs to A. The mystery of the bow ties. Speaking of bow ties, you know who else wore bow ties?
Who are bow ties?
People back in the 40s.
That's interesting because I think we have some things from the 40s that we're going to talk about.
Are we
We'll get
diving
to.
back to the golden age?
We are diving back to the Golden Age, and we're going to do all of that right after this. Okay, so before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you comment on what you're watching here. We are now fresh out of the Gotham War, and we have this kind of window between Gotham War and Beast World. So we decided we're going to take a look at.
Which is another micro event, which I feel we should preface that. This isn't a summer blockbuster event like Gotham War wasn't. This is
Right.
comparable to Titans as Gotham War was just to Batman. So
Correct.
check it out.
Correct. It's not like a Dark Crisis on Infinite
No.
Earths that's going to go on for 7 months or whatever. So it's not
No.
like that at all. So, but one of the things that DC has done recently is they have put much more of a focus on their Golden Age heroes. In fact, they started it with an initiative called the New Golden Age, and that rolled into the Justice Society America and the Stargirl series, and fresh off of his reincarnation as part of Night Terrors. One of the books that has been part of the New Golden Age is Wesley Doods' The Sandman. So
there's my copy. My copy is put away, unfortunately.
Exactly. It's all his copies all up here. So
it's only been a month ago I got this.
Yeah, exactly. You will remember more of it than I do, and I just read this yesterday again, so for a second time. So the Wesley Doods' Sandman actually starts off pre Justice Society of America. He actually is talking about some things that go on before. He's having multiple nightmares. He has a nightmare about a villain that he is that he is fighting. One's called the Tarantula, but then he also has these visions of this team that has multiple characters in it. And in the art, we see the Spectre, we see Hourman, Dr. Fate, Wildcat, Black Canary.
So we're not going to preface this with the big fight in the beginning, the opening action sequence.
Right, exactly. We find out that Wesley Doods is basically trying to take what he has concocted and uses in his fight against crime. He's trying to sell it to the military as a new way of fighting wars. If you could put out your opponent and put them to sleep, you wouldn't have to kill them because they'd all be asleep.
And it was cool seeing him do that, and his driving motive being his father's legacy before him. He's trying to submit himself. It was cool that they actually gave us a motive to the character, like outside of the mask and everything. It was unfortunate to see the military's response to it, like, yo, man, war is messy, war is expensive, and this is just not practical on a battlefield.
Right, and in fact, he basically gets the person that got him the audience with the military basically gets told by the person who was in charge there that basically he had just wasted his time bringing him there. And then we have a nice moment with Dion Lamont, who, if you've read any of Matt Wagner's Sandman Mystery Theater from years ago, she was a mainstay character in that as well.
Isn't she the one that died in the car wreck?
I believe she was, yes.
That was a long time ago. I don't remember for sure if that was her.
Sandman Mystery Theater was a while ago. It goes back to the 90s with Matt Wagner writing it, I believe, with some other people as well. So we then find We end up uh, Wesley
Night
Dodds
on
gets invited to
Night on
the
the Town.
correct
Night on the
night on the
Town,
town.
right?
Correct. He has a night on the town. So he goes out and as he is enjoying himself, he basically says that he's got to go. And so, he's just still too traumatized by the meeting that he just had with the military. And so he decides that he needs to, he's going to walk home. But as he walks home, he sees that there's some things that are going on in one of the alleys. And so he pulls out his Sandman gear. Um, and, he basically takes care of what's going on in the alley. But as that happens, there is a fire truck that passes by the alleyway. That when he goes out into this main street, he can see that the thing that's on fire is actually his mansion. So, and that's kind of where we end up with the story of him basically running towards his mansion, his home that's burning down. So there's lots of different things that are put in play here. There is his desire to basically he almost seems like he wants to get out of the business of doing the superheroing stuff and use all of his
Technology.
knowledge and technology, right? You know, to kind of better mankind, for lack of a better term, although he would still be using it in war. But so there's that. And then it's a 6-issue miniseries, so I think that we probably have not really seen who the main villain is going to be, probably for the 6 issues. But it could possibly have something to do with the fire that's set as well.
Yeah,
So.
apparently someone's broke in and stole his stuff. We know from the solicitation. And for me, some of the highlight with this book, like the pacing was kind of hot and cold for me. It starts off with a huge action scene with him busting into an entire gang operation and everything, and they really show us the dynamic of Robert Vendetti's Golden Age Sandman,
Mhm.
and he's really intense. He's not just putting criminals to sleep; he's hitting them with his gas gun, and it's actually inducing fear. And then he's driving that fear with the way he's interacting and talking and taunting with him. And we see it again later in that alley scene when he leaves the party to find those hoods in the alley doing crime and stuff. And I love the take on the Sandman with that aspect of it, because instead of I don't know, like the second Sandman who was all into the dreaming stuff and the visions and all that, this guy has that like Dark Knight-esque feel to him while he's working. You can see that whole facade that he puts on when he puts on the suit. I thought that was really great. And I did enjoy that with his first issue. We did get those slow moments where we spent a lot of time with him talking to Gale. We did spend a good amount of time with that scene with him and his friend trying to sell the technology of the general. So it did a lot of like mood setting, time setting, and I really enjoyed that because Riley Rossman's on the art, and I don't typically enjoy this artist,
Mhm.
but because they spent the time to set the tone of this like late 30s, early 40s era feel, the art actually like started blending with the story really well. It had that vibe. It worked out great for me.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about. I'm not really a big fan of Riley Rossmo either, but it almost seems like in some ways he kind of one of the reasons why I don't tend to like him is because I think in a lot of ways, in a lot of the books that he draws, he tends to accentuate
They're almost
the
caricatures.
yeah, but also the anime style. It almost comes off
Mhm.
as anime as opposed to this. I think he kind of dialed it back a little bit, and it wasn't as anime as I've seen him do in other like when he did the Robin series when he first started that. It was not
Oh,
it was not
Robin or Robin King. When you did that
Robin.
Robin King one shot, that's the only other
Yeah,
time that I'm like, this was the right choice.
right. No, when he started on when he started on the Tim Drake Ryan Robin, it was much too anime for me. And then he did that whole Flash um,
Issue
prequel.
two, yeah, issue two with fastest
Yeah,
man on earth. Nope,
yeah.
hard pass.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So I'm interested to see where this goes. I'm not
Mhm.
counting on any of these going beyond 6 issues because that's kind of all they were solicited. But it would be wonderful if we could keep some of them going on. But the second one actually is Jay Garrick, The Flash, written by um, written by
Mm,
a very good friend of ours here at DC Comics Deep Dive, Mr. Jeremy Adams.
fire, fire. He was taken off the main Flash title way too soon, and what a treat to have him put on Green Lantern, and what a bonus treat for them to announce the Jay Garrick Flash title was going to be written by him, who clearly knows what he's doing with these characters, and this book is no exception.
Yes, we start back basically in 1963. where we see Jay and Judy are racing towards, for lack of a term, basically like Hoover Dam,
The Hoover
uh,
Dam.
the Hoover Dam, that it has been booby trapped with TNT.
Yeah, there's
Um,
damn bombs everywhere.
right, those are there's damn bombs.
Mhm.
Um, and uh, Jay basically stops to tell Judy what to do, and by the time he finishes telling Judy what to do, she's gone to basically do what it is she needs to do.
Yeah, we find
Um,
out that the villain has not just rigged the dam with bombs. They have Jay's wife and Judy's mom inside hostage. So the stakes are super high right out the gate. The pacing is at a 10 right when we start this issue.
right, exactly. And so we get that scene where Judy has run in to try to save the mother. By the time Jay gets there, um, Joan says, "Where's our daughter?" And Jay says, "You must have hit your head because we don't have a daughter."
The other way
Um,
around, right?
no, uh, no. Joan says, where is Judy?" And Jay says, "Judy," and he says, "Yes, our daughter. Where is she?"
Oh yeah.
And Jay says, "You must have hit your head because we can't have kids. It's okay."
Oh yeah, and then she just starts playing into it, like he
Right.
just slowly dissolves into
Right. She's
into
like, "Right, of
reality.
course." Nope.
Yeah, it was kind of sad to see that moment happen. Just like how smooth it was, though, was really impressive. Like with the writing was just so fluid through that scene. Then all of a sudden, as a reader, like, yo, that's painful. Like
Right.
their child's gone.
Right. And so we cut from that exact moment where Judy has just disappeared. We know Judy has just disappeared to present day where Judy is now back.
Which we
And
saw in the Stargirl Lost Children miniseries that Jeff Johns did.
correct. And so, they're basically going through the house and everything. And, Judy's looking at all these things and, she's talking to her dad, who basically says, there is now like a whole team of people. It's like we're a big family. There's more flashes than you can shake a stick at. And so she starts to feel almost as though, everything has changed for their family except for her because she's still stuck at the age that she was when she disappeared. And she's basically back now. And basically everyone else has had
Moved
30,
on.
40, 30, 40 years to move on, basically. Um, so we find out that she's called the Boom, um, and they go out on some some quick missions or whatever to do some things, and then they start to talk about the person that they hadn't thought about in so long, and Judy brings it up, and it's the person by the name of Doctor Elemental, who was the villain in that going back to 1963.
That damn
Um,
intro.
Exactly, that they were fighting, and Joan and Jay don't remember Doctor Elemental, but when they say that we never found him, when you vanished, he vanished. I didn't even remember him until you just mentioned his name, and so she's not convinced. She's not convinced that there's something still going on, and that everything that has happened may have something to do with him.
And then we get the awesome flashback at that point of Judy's perspective from the damn events in the beginning. And we see that she did have a little skirmish with him. She was able to unmask him, see his identity, and
Correct.
uh, and then she vanished in front of him. Like he watched her vanish. He actually witnessed it. He's aware of her leaving, and he took the opportunity to re-protect his secret identity and obviously make a change in direction with his villainy. So
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's, one of the big things is a couple big things. Two, what exactly is the plan of Dr. Elemental going on here? Two, exactly who is he? Because she recognized, to your point, she recognized him when his
mhm.
mask came off. She says, I've seen you before. So, she definitely knows who it is. And just as she is about to rescue her mother, that's when she kind of pulls an Avengers Endgame and kind of
She
disappears.
busted.
Exactly. She dusted, and but we see in the final page in the final panels that he was Dr. Elemental was still there, and now he has a chance to have his overall plan still succeed no matter how long it takes. So he's still in the game. So um, you know, kudos to Jeremy. The he's writing a story that is 60 years in the making, for lack of a better term, 50, 60 years in the making. That's really playing the long game if you're a villain, for one thing. But he's doing it in a way that is, it's great to see. We were talking before about how, seeing, two different time frames in the same type of a comic, and how you can see how one can play into the other and everything. And it really, if it's done well, it can really, enhance the comic. And I think,
Mhm.
in this case, I think it happened as well. Um, so yeah, definitely looking forward to that. Um, my
Mhm.
favorite of the three, although they were all good, but my favorite of the three was probably Green Lantern, just
Yeah,
because of Green Lantern.
that was just insane. Like I didn't know Tim Sheridan had it in him.
Hmm.
Like having read some of his stuff that I feel had suffered heavily from editorial decisions, like going through Future State and directly after while they were getting everything back on. So I feel like with the Dawn of DC being like firmly cemented, it clearly has an overall game plan outside of any individual title. Sheridan came in here like batting 1,000. Like this was impressive.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean we'll talk about this as we go along. But to your point, you mentioned the Dawn of DC. It is obvious that the Dawn of DC initiative is a multi-year thing that they're doing
Well
here.
crafted, well mapped out,
Mhm.
premeditated couple years of comic books we have here.
Right, we still have things that we saw a year and a half ago that have yet to pay off, with like Amanda Waller and things like that
Ooh,
we
let's
know are
go.
going to pay off.
Yeah,
But
it's coming.
yeah, exactly. But it's been they've been on the slow burn. They've done it in a way. I know we're getting off topic, but they've done it in a way that it kind of gives you the slow burn. Like we haven't
That's what
forgotten about it. We haven't
it's
forgotten
what
about
makes
all these people.
it make it pay. That's what like is like. That's when you get the best of the stories.
Mhm.
Like when you've been following along and you get those little plot details and those little Easter eggs, and then they put them in front of you. It just gives it more weight. It gives it more stakes. It gives it more meaning. And I don't know. It just feels good. It's been a couple of years since DC's really had an ongoing, like stable foundation that they've been releasing on with all the stuff that happens from time to time with companies. But yeah, I'm very excited for what's coming.
Absolutely. Alan Scott, Green Lantern. This starts off actually with Alan Scott.
Here.
Yeah, this starts with Alan Scott in J. Edgar Hoover's office in Washington D.C. Basically, for lack of a better term, J. Edgar Hoover wants Alan Scott to promote the JSA more because he's not promoting them enough.
For
And
context, anybody just getting into Alan Scott for the first time or the Justice Society of America, in the earliest days of the team, they worked for the government. They were
Mhm.
a black ops team of superheroes for the government. The government would call them and say, hey, we have a problem over here on this island or on this college campus or in this office building. And this team, unlike the Justice League, would go and handle it undercover as much as possible. Yes, they were seen. Yes, but they were not limelight characters. That's why this is such a fantastic callback to like alt history mixing in real history, and how clever to use J. Edgar Hoover of all people for this scene.
Exactly, because he had no secrets. Um,
None. And some that actually came out to light.
exactly.
Glass
Um,
house, J. Edgar, glass house.
right, exactly. Basically, how he gets Alan Scott to do this is he basically tells Alan Scott, "I know you're Alan Scott. Don't we don't, and he says, "Who's Alan Scott?" And he's like, "Don't play this game. I know more about you than you do."
Mm,
Including they have a picture of Alan and his boyfriend Johnny in bed that suddenly morphs into the next panel on the next page. So we go from
mm,
that picture into the next panel where the two of them are talking. It was a much different time, obviously, in the 1940s, or is it 1930s even? 1936, California, 1936. Much different time. They basically were talking about the fact that we could be put in jail for what we do, in the privacy of our own home, type of a thing. Um, uh, but
yeah, so that's
Johnny.
pretty good context. Even that J. Edgar Hoover is, it's like a decade later that he's trying to frame him for something from a decade prior. He was wanting Green Lantern to get out there more and participate with the JSA, but he's wanting to distance himself from the team out of guilt for who he is.
Right.
That just dawned on me that's how old Hoover was holding back those pictures.
Hmm. Yep. And so we see, some good character building between Alan and Johnny. We then go that we find out that one of the missions that they've been working on together is to try to find this flame that they have found, or to control it somehow. It's basically underwater, and they're confused as to how can flame burn underwater.
It's called the
This
Crimson Flame.
The
It was
crimson flame, right?
just a mystery. They
And that
discovered it.
this goes back to, we mentioned this before, but this goes back to the story, the prequel story that we had in the DC Comics, DC Pride Through the Years. The only original story in that compilation was like a 6 or 7 page Alan Scott story, and it was the prequel to this, where they go down basically, and so they basically find, this crimson flame underneath, and so now the whole deal is to try to control it. That's the whole premise
Yeah, so
of.
this is wartime 1940s. They're
Right.
working as under a science arm for the military. So they're out there trying to figure out if this mystical legend of the crimson flame burning under the ocean is real. And they've discovered it and they want to get a piece of it and try to harness it as an energy source for war.
Right. And so we flash back to New York City, 1941. Alan Scott is there with, he calls him Darby, but if you're a Green Lantern fan, you may know him better as Doiby. Doiby Dickles was the character's name.
How do you say it?
Doiby. Doiby. It was, he calls him Derby, but if you look at how they wrote it in the 30s and the 40s, it was Doiby. It was Doiby. Doiby Dickles, who is the you're gonna wake up in the middle of the night and say that to yourself and laugh.
Maybe. I'm gonna say that when I stub my toe from now on.
Yeah. It's like, for the love of Doiby.
Derby.
Um, so we then find, Alan Scott is basically, hears some reports, about some things that are going on, and when he gets there, he basically, the people feel as though the people that are there, you know, are wondering what's going on because they claim that they already saw him go in, and rescue everybody, and then come out, and he's like, I just
I
got
assure
here.
you, I just showed up here. What are you
Yeah.
talking about?
We also see some, we while he's doing that, we flash back to, basically the Crimson Flame basically going wild, all over the people that are on the ship and everything.
They contained it for a brief moment and it
Right.
attacked from underwater. They siphoned some of it into this containment thing they have, then it comes out from under the water and starts hitting the boat. It grabs his lover Johnny, pulls him out over the ocean. He's got him stretched, and
Mhm.
yeah, it doesn't look too good for old Johnny.
It does not. But just as that happens, so we have someone who appears to be like Green Lantern that is flying around, and then we have the red crimson, and just as we get to, the final page, and we see, Alan in 1941 or whatever, Alan Scott reaching for, Johnny. He's pulled away. Johnny is pulled away, and we find then, we then flash. We don't know it at the moment because it's the bottom panel of one page and then another panel of the next page. But we basically see people that are holding down Alan Scott, and they basically put something in his mouth, to bite down on and everything. And we find out that he's in Arkham Asylum. With the next, it's the next issue T is being conversion. So we're led to believe, not almost, that he's basically going through, gay conversion therapy, and
Mhm.
that's basically what he's going through. And it's. Again, hats off to Tim Sheridan. That is a huge thing to tackle, in something like this. But
You're gonna piss some people off, and not just that. You're gonna have to you got to be pretty confident with your writing skills to tackle that without it being a one note story, really. And they
yeah,
did a good job with this one, which was so impressive because it told a massive amount of story about like the motives of the Navy, the power of the Green Flame, Alan Scott's current status with the JSA, trying to distance himself as he feels like the self guilt that he doesn't live up to the team and doesn't want his what's perceived as crimes of those days to tarnish the team. Like there was just a lot going on. So I'm wondering how well he's going to be able to juggle this moving forward because it looks like we're diving down deeper into it.
Yeah, he's going full
Going for
bore.
broke. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which to be fair, it's something that I can't recall ever having been addressed before in comic book form, and maybe that's because maybe it shouldn't be, but to me,
Yeah.
uh,
In
you
a
know,
time era where comic companies and a lot of big media in general are trying to find more ways to be diverse and inclusive in an ever
mm,
changing society, you hear people complain all the time with like race swapping, gender swapping, sexuality swapping characters.
mhm,
There's countless examples of it happening, and there's times where it just absolutely ruins a story because you stop telling good superhero stories and you think all you can do is talk about sexuality. Talking to you, Tim Drake, Robin, that was a good example of the story was his sexuality. It wasn't about the character anymore. I think with Green Lantern, there's something unique to be had here because when it comes to like sexuality swapping someone, this is the one time, literally the one time I've ever seen it make perfect sense because he's a golden age character. Like we pointed out, it was literally a crime what you do in your own house in some cases
mhm,
back then. So if you're ever going to have a character to be able to tell unique stories and shine some light on like what it was like for an era that none of us grew up in, thank God we didn't have any friends or loved ones or people themselves that had to deal with that kind of stuff. This is the one situation where you can like fit it in seamlessly to the story. Like, why didn't we know he was gay before? Why is he just
mm,
gay now? Well, let's talk about it. It actually
right.
makes sense this time. It wasn't just we need more characters on the roster. And this isn't necessarily new for Alan Scott, being that they when they did the New 52, that's when the character was switched over to gay, which was a new universe. So
Mhm.
he's been kind of like a seamless character from the jump. And if you've never read the New 52 Earth 2 stuff, it's the best that they had to offer. If you ask me, it was I love that stuff. That was just the
Yeah.
one.
In fact, it led to the name of a very important program that's every Sunday night at 8:30.
It did. It did.
That's right. So yeah, again, I'm excited to see where this goes. I have, I have faith in Tim Sheridan until he shows me that it's not that it's misplaced. So, it's definitely dangerous territory to go into. But you know what? Some of the there's that risk reward type of a thing. So,
Paid off for Tom Taylor, if you ask me. He
yep,
he did fine
exactly.
with John Kent.
Yep,
Hit or miss,
yep,
hit or miss.
exactly.
Stay focused
But
on the character, it'll be fine.
exactly. But that's going to be it for this edition of DC Comics Deep Dive. Um, don't forget again to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment, let us know how we're doing. What are your thoughts about these three issues? Did you read them? Did you like them? I can't. I hope they continue, and I pray that we get a Doctor Fade and we get a Spectre and we get a I would totally right down the board. All of them. Exactly. There you go. But that's going to be it. I am Paul. He is Mark,
Mark, but we are Legion.
and you are now leaving Sector